So I'd like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Dr. Bridgett Chapin, who comes to us from Haskell Indian Nations University, where she is on environmental science faculty, and she is also chair of the Natural Sciences Department. And before that, Bridgett got her BA in biology at Westminster College in Missouri, followed by coming to KU for a Master of Science degree in environmental science in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. And then she didn't leave, but she stayed and got her PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology under Jerry Denoyles, who's our guest visitor today. And Bridget's PhD dissertation information was about regional stream classification frameworks in regards to landscape scale patterns in fish communities, which is how I met Bridgett when we were sharing data with Don Huggins and the Central Plains Center for Bioassessment. And that was probably 26 years ago.
Yeah.
And here we are. Here Bridgett is to tell us all about the wetlands at Haskell and also the research she's been doing with her students there. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Declan. Really appreciate that introduction. I'm going to be mostly in front of the screen just because we had a little bit of issue connecting my laser pointer to the forwarding. So I'm going to be quite a bit here. I'm going to try to go out here, and I do like to do that when I'm talking. Yeah, I'm Bridgett Chapin. I have been doing research with students and collaborators, as well as, of course, teaching at Haskell Indian Nations University. It's a teaching college. And so folks should definitely keep that in mind. I really want to talk about the research we're doing here, kind of my especially approach to that research and many collaborators approach at Haskell towards stewardship application, conservation, and that kind of thing. I want to talk about the research we're doing especially since the South Lawrence Trafficway construction. I will touch a little bit on history, but I'm not a historian, and so I definitely want to acknowledge there is some very important history. I'm not the best person to expound on that. However, I will talk a little bit about that as well, and I want to talk about opportunities for collaboration and those kind of things, and then highlight some results that we have, and hopefully not go so long that you have to leave that I'm still talking, which may happen. But anyway, by the way, this kind of idea for me to present here started when I was talking with Sarah Bear about some of the work that Dory is doing actually at Haskell. We'll talk about that too. And we were talking about the fact that, people don't really know what's been going on at Haskell, especially in terms of research, but also, that balance between curriculum and research. And so this is a good opportunity to talk about that, especially, like I said, post South Lawrence Trafficway. The other thing I want to mention, of course, is we have a Bachelor of Science in Environmental Science at Haskell. So our students are working toward that degree. That is the only science program or science bachelor's degree at Haskell. And so this all relates to strengthening that and those opportunities, and really stewarding and strengthening our wetlands as well. Okay. I've got two screens in front of me. I'm figuring it out. Okay, great. Hopefully this is, come on, buddy. Yes. So I want to talk about collaborators up front. I definitely am not just one person doing research. This is really a collaborative approach. I want to acknowledge that I'm doing work with the students, with the faculty, with colleagues at Haskell Indian Nations University, past and present, building on what they've done before I came. I got there in 2009, witnessed SLT construction from 2013 to 2016, right? So I kind of saw those pieces, but people were there long before that, right? And the Indigenous communities that have striven to continue and contribute to this space, right? Agencies and university partners such as Kansas Biosurvey, EPA, and USGS. And I do want to acknowledge the Haskell and Wakarusa Valley wetlands as collaborators. So thinking about that more than human perspective, right? More than human being. So let's hear you thinking about it. But thinking about this as these wetlands as entities and collaborators with us. Okay, and that is a concept legally that's coming out in some work, right? To protect spaces and work on that. Also, it is a convener and teacher of people. So think about it, the wetlands are there and it's convening people to it, bringing people together like a conference organizer. Let's all come together and do this project, right? Or do this, you know, like a project manager. The wetlands as a project manager, right? Convening and teaching the students every day, right, in class. And the collaboratory concept is something I've been working with lately, kind of trying to think about how it applies to research that we would do around the wetlands at Haskell, essentially including community, obviously students and other folks at Haskell, and collaborating around work. So this laboratory or research collaboratory. Okay, so collaboration laboratory. And this is coming from or inspired by work by Jennifer Hernandez from Puerto Rico. She does sociology of disaster research and a lot of community-based and community-engaged research. So that's also kind of a guiding light for me. Okay, I keep wanting to use this other one. All right, great. So major goals, we're going to highlight the research and other initiatives by students and faculty in the Haskell Wetlands Complex since South Lawrence Trafficway construction. Propose ideas to help spur effective collaboration to support science curriculum, student inquiry, and research capacity at Haskell. And this is really going to feed back into that foundation for protecting and stewarding this valuable space, this important space, and its surrounding watershed in the Wakarusa River Valley. One of the guiding principles here with my work is thinking, this is, you know, kind of coming to me over time, and I'm sure other people have already jumped to this, but Haskell is really a microcosm for Native students to learn about challenges that they're going to experience in broader Indian country, in their homelands throughout the US, right? So they're seeing encroachment, highway development. They need to manage or steward wildlife, important medicinal plant populations, you know, their boundaries, their sovereignty, water quality, and all of that is here in a micro version, right? Micro scale. So it's a great opportunity. If we strengthen the wetlands, it's a great opportunity to strengthen tribal nations and I would say tribal sovereignty as well, right? To face those challenges. A great practice space, a great space in itself, but also a great practice space. And that, of course, helps lead into the Haskell mission, right? It's a really important part of it. Okay, so just giving a little overview of the wetlands. This is a drone image shot by Jamie Stallings during her 2021 work. And you can see this is post South Lawrence Trafficway. Oh, thank you. Yeah, let me, if anybody minds doing that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much. But yeah, this is post South Lawrence Trafficway work, and you can see essentially what has happened here is, let's go to this thing. We've got, what's that?
31st Street.
That's old 31st Street. Kind of blows your mind, right? It's old 31st Street, okay? Here's that new alignment of 31st. Here's the South Lawrence Trafficway with these little black things are noise buffers, right? Sound barriers. They actually serve to amplify the sound into our wetlands from what's happening on 31st. So you've got trucks, cars, et cetera, coming here, bang, ba-boom, bounce back into our wetlands. So that when we're out there, it actually, the sound barrier that protects the Baker side amplifies the sound for Haskell. Whoops. The design wasn't so great. But yes, this is old 31st. Now we used to, of course, Haskell wetlands prior to recently, right? We only went to here because that was old 31st. Of course, before that, Haskell, the historical Haskell wetlands went all the way to the Wakarusa River, right down. I don't, you know, you can kind of see tree lines back here, but all the way south to the Wakarusa River. Just quick little bit of history, right? We were a boarding school, a lot of suffering and sacrifice and death. was at the start of our school, but we've evolved, I guess I would say, to a place where Indigenous people can go to learn more about their culture, to employ Indigenous ways of knowing and weave those things in. But we had this boarding school and boarding school mentality. The land that went all the way to the river. We had converted the wetlands in the Wakarusa Valley in these spaces to agriculture. The boarding school did. The students had to work there. And then they were on the Baker side, slowly more actively converted back. On the Haskell side, this road was built. Baker got the land, the rest of the land south of 31st in 1968. This road was built, and these are essentially fill pits, right, for road building. And so they're slowly filling in. But this was wetland, agriculture, fill pits, healing back to wetland, right? And we're dealing with that. Of course, I don't know every bit of the history of the land here, but that's what I've understood over my time at Haskell. What I'm looking at now is the fact that we have, after SLT construction, we have gained some land on the north side of the South Orange Traffic Way or built environment. And we essentially have 4 basins: northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. And then we've got this boardwalk here. So that's kind of how I divide things up when I talk about research. We talk about the different basins we now have. We might do comparisons, right? And that kind of thing. Of course, we have woodland, and then we have prairie. Kind of, you're not seeing the prairie that's part of Haskell, but we have prairie, woodland, and wetland. And that's why I use that term, the Haskell Wetlands Complex. A couple other things just to quickly point out is, of course, they compacted everything down when they build this roadbed. The only places that are obvious that animals might be able to move between this habitat patch and the other side of the wetlands and then onto the river or vice versa are the east underpass over here, and then the west underpass is essentially over on this west side. And I've got some pictures that are going to help you see that as well. So just kind of orienting to what we're looking at.
And the water drains that way too.
Toward the east. It goes toward the east. That's what we've been able to glean. Well, it's pretty obvious now, that flow going to the east. Of course, that's an engineering change, right? Instead of a north to south or south to north flow, we've got that eastern flow due to engineering changes. A little bit more orientation, right? Now you can really see those basins. Here's again to orient yourself. New 31st. This is that southwest basin, southeast, northeast, northwest, and then we have the boardwalks right in here, and then we have a little bit of a sub basin, a smaller basin in the northwest, so kind of two small basins in the northwest. And all of this is biomat, and a lot of it is wolffia. I don't want to go into more detail, but KDOT dug this pit out when we asked them not to do that. Anyway. They actually asked us to come and be there with 2 weeks notice to tell them what the plan should be to decommission this roadbed. So I'm out there with hard hat on and all these construction people just, oh, I'm supposed to be teaching. Oh, well, now I'm supposed to be out here, and other faculty as well. So something you might not have known about either. It's all of these things happen and you just keep going, right? So this is an opportunity to say a few things that have been happening. All right, this is zoomed out a bit more. You can really see the wetlands and the north and south side of the historic Haskell wetlands. I do talk about the Haskell wetlands on the north, and then I talk about the Baker side of the Haskell wetlands on the south. That's something I've been starting to do. I think that's more appropriate, and we can have that conversation. But anyway, so yeah, that's the historic Haskell wetlands essentially, right? Goes from our basins that you can see all the way down to the river, which is south of here. I don't have the river in this. One of the cool things, and this relates to research, right? Lemonade out of lemons, right? That's kind of what I keep saying to myself. Lemonade resilience, right? Lemonade out of lemons. What do we have here that has been set up in terms of experimental design? right? We've got this grand experiment that the civil engineers have helped us conduct, right? And the people in our community, city and county leaders. So we've got dispersal barrier. We've got, two sides of a once contiguous habitat. So we've got all sorts of questions we can ask about, barriers to dispersal, genetics, inbreeding, all of those pieces. Migration, how are they migrating from this river habitat here through the floodplain and into other parts of important habitat that have been urbanized, right, and divided up. So a lot of different questions. How has the hydrology changed since this construction? How is water quality different from this side to this side? How does this function as a receiving water? This is a point that Don Huggins would often make, that this is really a receiving water for the city of Lawrence. Is anybody acknowledging that? What's our responsibility creating that wastewater or sewer water and then having all of that street water run into here, right? What's going on? And what is the hydrology, right? And again, how has it changed since we built this big, we increased the divide, right? We had the old 31st, we increased that kind of berm even more. And what does that mean for flooding in our community and at Haskell? Lots of intriguing questions if you have that lemonade, right? That kind of just scientific curiosity versus, dang, that happened to us kind of thing, right? Which you can have both. You can acknowledge both. So here's some selected research project themes. How am I doing on time? I'm already at half past. I'm going to touch on, some of them. What I thought I would do is talk about opportunities for engagement or collaboration as I talk about some different projects. This is more of an overview, and then I've got specific ones that I'll talk a little bit more about. But so just to give you a range, this isn't everything. We've also got work on muskrats happening in the offing this semester. I'm excited about that. But from fish surveys to crayfish, landscape assessment and burn plan, that's Annalise Guthrie, Kathy Littlebolt, Courtney King, elevational analysis, hydrology, and flooding. We have a collaboration with the USGS starting to look at what's going on since that construction. How has the hydrology been affected? Monarch tagging, we go every year with our course, right? So we have course-based research, and then we have more independent research with students and collaborative research with students, say during internships or during my undergraduate research course. These are vehicles, but a lot of it can be course-based. And so we get some data during our courses, say principles of ecology, we collect some data, or aquatic biology, and then we are able to use that and also that independent research. Long-term monitoring infrastructure and capacity research or project initiative. That one was really supported by Don Huggins and Debbie Baker. And I'll show you some information about that. Water quality, terrestrial and aquatic plant communities. Now, again, if I wasn't really involved in this or I wasn't made aware of it, I may not have fully characterized other types of work that are going on. So this is definitely not everything. So this is mostly what I know about or what I've been involved in, just to say. And it's mostly post South Lawrence Trafficway construction. So post 2016, because they were constructing from 2013 to 2016. And of course, we don't have all of the instruments or a lot of times the capability, especially with data archiving, that we would need to, fully realize the potential of these projects. So if you're interested in these, we can start talking. So here are some collaborations from, so basically research projects. This is from an internship. This was funded by the Kansas Idea Network of Biomedical Research Excellence. I have to say, give a nod to KIMBRI through the National Institutes of Health. It really helped fund a lot of Haskell-based research. So wanting to create opportunities on Haskell's campus to do research. But you don't have to leave Haskell. You could do it right here and get some internship opportunities. But this one was from 2016, Natasha Chanot, evaluating plant community establishment and structure in a recently decommissioned road in the Haskell wetlands. So you can see how this is a much earlier photo right after that decommissioning. of the road. And then she was looking at plant communities in these macro plots. She has a ton of amazing, she's got a great plant list, a ton of amazing photos. I'm sorry, don't have time to go through that right now, but that is a research project that we want to continue into the future. And people like Courtney King, Courtney Masterson are doing follow-up, all sorts of follow-up on plant research. And I'm going to mention a little bit more about that. Grid design in order to establish a georeference grid or sampling grid. This was a project done by Joe Zupan, also with help from all of those folks. Josh Mizell was really important for a lot of our mapping GIS work. And you can see this initial, or it's actually the second version of georeference grid. We had a student who did a first georeference grid, but we can't find the documents now, but this is the second incarnation. And we've got, trying to establish some sort of a long-term ability to come back and know this is the cell where we found this phenomenon. And we know that that's the correct area, right? Especially useful in phenology research and that kind of thing. So, and also something that, say, if you're doing long-term research and maybe developing a long-term ecological research station for a tribal college, that this would be a good piece of infrastructure for that. The yellow posts are posts that he installed in the grid. So the blue is on paper, right, electronic, and then the yellow are posts that he installed. And then he also installed, we wanted to put in permanent water monitoring stations with PVC housing so that you could hang data loggers. So we installed that, and Don Huggins had provided our initial onset data loggers to look at temperature over time. And we've got data from that. And we can also put other onset data loggers like water depth, so real-time water depth, dissolved oxygen, and I think we have one other sensor, might be an algal sensor, that we could deploy. I just don't have the capacity to do that, and that would be a great thing to mentor students on. Oh, did this? Okay, there we go. So kind of this grid evolution. So Courtney King expanded this grid. This is the third version, and she expanded it, updated it for the entire campus, right? Thinking about the whole campus, maybe the trees on campus and prairies that are being restored in certain other areas of campus. We didn't really go up into the West Prairie or kind of more north into north of the medicine wheel, which I haven't mentioned the medicine wheel yet, but that's an important space in the Haskell wetlands, spiritually and culturally. Let's see. So this is that updated third grid, and she also she mapped ecosystems within there and restoration areas. One of the things I would like to do, and we'll talk more about the restoration work from Courtney King. One of the things I'd like to do is with our trail camera research, which I meant to mention in that overview slide, but I didn't, but we have trail camera research going on. I'd like to set up those trail cams and put them in certain restoration locations to test hypotheses about animal use impacted by restoration. Are there, more native species in this area where she's removed, she and USDA partners have removed honeysuckle or teasel or fern, right? So those are all things that we can do. No, for some reason this is not. Oh, there we go. I've got two screens, so yeah. Just putting this back up again to think about the fact that we can also look at a comparison, right, of the Baker and the Haskell side with water quality. These are water quality monitoring sites. And I think that leads us into, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we did with Ian Gambill, Debbie Baker was involved in this, right? Correct? No, you weren't. Okay, maybe it was Don Huggins was involved in this one. Okay. I hope Don's watching from Puerto Rico.
Costa Rica.
Oh, sorry, from Costa Rica. Or I could blend them. Costa Rico. Anyway, sorry. All right. It's not a comedy show, Britt. Okay, anyway, so this is some of the work with Ian Gamble you can see that we've got this comparison of sites here to a really intensive sampling of the water quality on the north side. We were using, with this particular study, we were using more high quality sites as a kind of a reference for the sites on the north side. But this is the kind of, opportunity we have. We use this division and the difference in the two sides to test some hypotheses about the impacts of roadway and that kind of thing. So he looked at oxygen and all sorts of other water quality parameters, conductivity, temperature, pH. Let's see if I can, I'm trying to get this thing over here. There we go. Dissolved oxygen, and he made a really nice figure to kind of show what's going on in the different basins. He didn't do it for the Baker side, but he showed it for the Haskell side. And you can kind of see that larger basin on the northeast having higher oxygen levels. And this is summer of 2018. So just 2 years after the construction was done. He had to use a canoe and have a research assistant come out with him, which we're able to hire through the K-Embry. So that's another thing to keep in mind, right? So that we can actually hire a research assistant, like another student, to help for those students that need to go out very frequently to do their research. He really did a lot of work here. There's a couple of supersaturation sites due to algae. That's why you have that higher number there. And he's got, we've got more water quality information, but I need to pop through. Okay, and then there's the trail camera research. And this is maybe what I'll spend a little bit more time on, although we're almost at, let's see, I have till 12, correct? Or till 1, right? Okay, good. But yeah, so we started to use trail cameras to document the vertebrate community in the wetlands. Of course, post SLT, we hadn't been using trail cams before, but definitely people had been going out and observing through things like the Teacup grant, other collaborations, class, course-based learning and monitoring and that kind of thing. But we decided to deploy trail cameras, bought with the K-Embry funding, and pay students for summer internships. They can do both a semester scholar program, that's the name of the internship for the K-Embry, or the summer scholar program. And there's also a community-based scholar internship, which also provides more money for travel and that kind of thing. And we do acknowledge that work in the wetlands is community-based, right? So that's something that, because it is an important community spot. And so we've got those different funding opportunities through this grant, the K-Embry. So we wanted to document the post-highway vertebrate community, and then we wanted to focus on the documentation of the return of the North American river otter. I'm just going to call it river otter from now on, Lontra canadensis. And then wildlife migration corridors, we were thinking about them early on, but we didn't really deploy them until a little bit later in the research for use by animals to traverse the South Lawrence Traffic Way and any other built structures within the Wakarusa River Basin. And we want to get data on that underpass use. And all of this time we're being asked to consult, right, on the different building projects, the South Lawrence Traffic Way expansion, the Wakarusa River Vision Plan, the New Boston Crossing development. All of these things are coming up as we're doing this research. Okay. And so my first, initially just kind of overview, we got these infrared trail cameras, motion sensor, so that they can record 24 hours. Started in May of 2021, and we deployed them in representative habitats, and then all 4 basins. I was actually out in the wetlands, and there had been other folks earlier who had said, I think I saw an otter. I was out in the wetlands in June of 21. I saw 4 pups and an adult. The adult jumped up and chased me. on the boardwalk. So it was a serious otter interaction. And I said, okay. And then we figured out there was a latrine there. And so I said, okay, let's focus on the otters with some of our trail cameras. So we refocused some of our cameras in June of 21 to track the otters and signs of the otters, latrine site, etc. And then we also added cameras later in the summer of 21 to understand highway effects. So focusing on sites in the underpasses, those east and west underpasses. Let's see who's using them. Which animals and who is using them, right? And how often? Are they, appropriate corridors to get through this fragmented basin? We did see them year-round from summer of 21 to summer of 22. So we were thinking, are they year-round residents? What's happening here? We don't need that right now. Let's see. I thought there was just a minute, sorry. Oh, I did want to point out, yeah, this is an ephemeral pool, woodland pool. And when I show you a map in a minute, you'll see which site this is. This is site 2. So this is one of the wetland habitats that people may not think of that is in the actual woodlands at Haskell. Just in terms of background, so I don't spend a bunch of time on that slide, right? River otters were very widespread. Trapping, pollution, habitat conversion limited their range, and they were extirpated from Kansas. Apparently in the 90s, we did have some documentation or some oral history of the otter in the Haskell wetlands, but not since then. Okay, so it was exciting to find them. It was very exciting to find them. Let's see here. This was work done by Garrett Williams, and we worked a lot with him in the field, helped him to realize his research potential, and he really did a wonderful job and really got into it. Let's see if this is going to come up for you guys. These are the kind of things we can produce through some of the Cambrai work. This is an eye poster, and it's nice to show, definitely show some video and that kind of thing. Let's see if I think it's in here that I want to show you. So some of his work. This guy is a really fun one. Let's see if I can come back over to the back of it. There we go. This is that site 2, but it's during a dry period. Oh no, so some amazing footage, and it just inspires people, students, anybody to, oh, I'm going to go, now I want to go test the soil. Now I want to go, so it's definitely something that inspires people to steward and to learn more, right? And then we have, I think, an otter shot. This is a far away, or not a blurry otter shot, but we have some good video. Some of the sites that he used later in the fall, because he did work through the summer and then into the fall. And then if I can get this to come up. Can you hear this? Maybe not so well. This is an otter chirping, trying to find, other otters, and she found one, and we think it's a female, but it's really tough to figure out sex of otters just with their head or tail above the water. So, and she continued to chirp. I don't know if I can, oh, there. She continued to chirp for about 10 minutes. And the students and we were going and checking cameras this day. So this is a point and shoot video, right? But we were going and checking cameras this day, and we kept hearing this bird chirping. Well, it wasn't a bird, it was an otter. So everybody was looking in the trees or in the sky or in a branch over here. And finally, oh my gosh, it's an otter. So everybody cried. It was a cry moment. Everybody cried, and it was very exciting. So we definitely really enjoyed that. And of course, we can get data species richness at different sites, activity at different sites, potentially indicators of population size, although that's difficult, especially if you can't identify individuals. So that's where maybe some genetics on stat could come in, and that's a great partnership. Of course, different habitat areas that are restored versus areas that are not restored. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to switch back to my talk. Okay, close this. Okay, and then I have to do this. Okay, I'm getting there. Okay, I got it. All right. So later in the fall and into the winter, Jamie Stallings took over, and she created a nice map showing you where all those camera sites, those original camera sites are. You can see some that were removed, but they're still registered as sites, some that are active. And also we added, during Garrett's work, we added this is the West Underpass. So we added those sites. That's where we're looking for how well do these underpasses function as migration corridors? How do they function? Who's using this? Is anybody using this that we can catch in these cameras? And maybe do we tell folks who are designing that expansion for the South Orange Traffic Way, hey, these underpasses work. This is the kind of right as the expansion was being planned, right? So now we're pretty much post-expansion, but it was right as the expansion was being planned. But it's a nice, just to kind of see that spread of sites. This is the medicine wheel right here. I think this is the first map that you could really see it well. And of course, Haskell campus up here. I hope people in Zoom can actually see me. I'm really not good at staying in the camera. Sorry. We also, of course, had some water quality sites, and this is just a thumbnail to go with some of the camera sites, because it was interesting to look at, would all of that, otter activity, we got beavers on there, muskrats, is that impacting, or could that be related to any sort of water quality changes? This is moving forward into, let's see, our third study. So we had Garrett, we had Jamie, and then we had Vic Secondine take over the third study, or third incarnation of this study. And they still maintained some of these sites on, let's see, that west underpass, but they moved the sites up. Let's see, can you see? I'm going to do this. So we moved some of the sites up here. We kept these marked, but we weren't looking. And then we started looking on that north side to see, can we catch some animals coming from the wetlands and then using it, right? Can we catch them? Because they could be coming from over here, right? There's a lot of places they can be coming from, right? This landscape scale work. They end up here, but where did they come from? So that was one of the thoughts behind the placement of those cameras. And then you can see those additional cameras that were placed. And some that were still retired, but acknowledged that woodland pool, for example, the boardwalks over here. Oh, this is, oh no, these ones were continued, sorry, 2 and 10. And then, I'm trying to remember which one. Well, sorry, these are sites that at some point they monitored. I'm not sure which ones they ended up retiring in the end, but that's the woodland pool. This is the area where we were seeing most of the otters, so we kept that site. That's where the boardwalk was. In all, I think we have about 34 sites that we've been monitoring. Let's see. Then Sean Bird and Asia Benally took over in 24 and 25. We had a bit of a lull, but in 24 and 25, Sean Bird and Asia Benally took over. And we definitely focused on this east underpass, because what was happening was we were not finding any aquatic mammals on the west underpass. We weren't seeing them move. So we thought, well, could the otters, because that's my favorite, could the otters be coming over here, or other aquatic mammals that are wonderful too? And so we focused on getting some images here. Also, I will say that Vic did put some cameras over here, and we just couldn't get any, sorry, over here, and we just couldn't get any documentation, right? We just couldn't get anything. So then I'm going to click on this thing. So then what we did was we put 2 cameras underneath, underneath this spot right here. Oh, sorry, this spot right here. We have 2 cameras, and I'll show you. Let me move this over. See if you can see this. Okay, great. So this is the eye poster from Sean's work, and this is an image of that east underpass, what it looks like, what the habitat on the north side look or south side looks like versus the habitat. This is the habitat on the north side versus the bridge at 1500 Road, where we have 2 cameras. I'm going to click on this so that you can see. So Sean created this. I really like this image. We've got the 2 cameras right here. This is a waterway here, right? And there's also a continuation of a waterway over here. This is the Baker side of the wetlands, and this is the north side of the wetlands, or kind of this kind of mix of canals and such. And we were trying to see if animals would start migrating here and finish with this camera. Can people see me circling? Oh yeah. We could not get anybody finishing at that camera, but we saw a bunch of activity over here, but not completing that passage. A bunch of activity, including otters. I think it's in here. I think the ones I want to show you are right here. Yeah. Okay. No. So I didn't try this when Andre was here. I hope it works. Do you see it? Oh, there it is. Okay, great. Oh, it's kind of tiny. There we go. Okay, so this is that underneath that bridge to the north of the underpass. We got a beaver, and then look, that's an otter. What's up? And we didn't have a long enough tape to, like a recording session, to actually see if they ended up really interacting or not. But they are sharing that space, which is really intriguing. And then we have, this is, oh yeah, this is a good one. I'm glad I practiced this. There's an otter in January, I believe it was, yeah, or December, during a kind of a snowy time. So a lot of activity, a lot of aquatic mammal activity on the east side, but not on the west side. Very interesting. I'll show you a few more. And we didn't ever see this guy finish crossing under the underpass either. Let's see if I can get this one up. So again, this is all, you can just see all the activity. This is just north of this really sterile looking kind of concrete slough. You ride your bike by there all the time, the east underpass there under the South Orange Traffic Way on the east side. So we have all of this activity, what's happening, but they're not finishing, whereas on the west underpass, they are finishing. So we think what's going on is that they may be taking an alternate route. They may be going, basically, this is where we're catching all that activity. Are you seeing that? Yeah. And they may be going this way and then south, going east and then south. And we want to set up more cameras, but we have to get permission, some land permission, because this channel goes all the way east and then to a private landowner, and then it goes south. So it's possible that's the route they're taking. It would be good to know, because we're, like I said, we're not seeing them go through here. I'm going to stop there just because it is right at 1 and I've got more things to say, but I do want to allow people to either to ask questions, or if you need to take off, I do have a little bit more to say, but went a little long. Yeah.
How did you put up those cameras under the underpass? Like, are they attached to the bridge, or are they on coast?
Yeah, they look all cute, don't they? You have to be in the canal, and I will say Sean did most of that heavy work carrying the T-posts down. anchoring them. We had Courtney King helping, we had Asian Benally helping. Did you all put that at all? Okay. And wading into that canal there that goes underneath this bridge. And then, yeah, driving that T-post down, putting rocks around them so they'll stay. And then you've got zip ties and straps and things like that. And you angle that camera. And so we had them angled in two directions, kind of almost one facing kind of this way, one this way, and one facing north, basically one facing south, so that you'd catch anybody going underneath, passing underneath this bridge here through this canal. And we did see quite a bit of bird activity, herons, egrets, that kind of thing in that area. But they did not turn, as far as we could record, and go along what's kind of a concrete slough right here that goes along next to this bike path and next to that road. They didn't do that compared to the west underpass, which they were using. Other questions? Okay, yeah.
Has Baker done any sort of work similar on their side of the wetlands where they've done camera trapping or documentation of water quality? Has there been any collaboration with the university on what they have on their side to show comparison, or is it mostly Haskell who is taking that initiative and doing most of the documentation and like field work?
Yeah, Andrew Rutter is the new director. It was Irene Unger, and of course, before that, Roger Boyd. I don't know if somebody was between them, but they were looking at water quality regularly, Bluebird Taylor, and we met, I don't know, it was a couple of years ago now, to talk about water quality sharing. Did a little bit of that, but that was with Irene Unger. I talked a bit with Andrew Rutter. I think that there are maybe some animal cameras up, some trail cams up, or at least, point and shoot work being done. I know, scat and trail tracks, and Andrew Rutter is very much a mammal person. So I'm sure he's doing some other things as well, but time to develop those collaborations is a challenge, but we have had some collaboration. I know that Debbie Baker is working on a mussel project for them, and also working on a mussel project for us, so that we can have a teaching collection of the mussels of the Wakarusa River. So, and I wrote a support letter for that. So there's that collaboration. Brian Hare was a student at Baker, and he was coming to Haskell to do a comparison, just like Ian Gambill was doing. He was doing that from the Baker perspective. He was a Baker student, and then we gave him access or permission, if you will. Not that it needs to be really formal, but we had that meeting when Irene was there to talk about his accessing the wetlands, getting water chemistry, and then he gave us his water chemistry work too. So we do have that. So we have quite a few kind of water chemistry snapshots over time. But yeah, more collaboration would be good. And when you collaborate, you also maintain access to that historical Haskell land, and they're very forthcoming with access and use, and classes coming to the Baker side of the Haskell wetlands. So yeah. Did I kind of answer your question? Yeah. Okay. All right. Other questions? I'm just gonna close this and then bring this. Yeah. Oh, is that Steve? Yes, thank you.
So I think when I arrived in the mid-80s, there was a lot of discussion then and later about constructed versus natural wetlands.
Mm-hmm.
I think I learned from Don Huggins, there's no natural water site anywhere in Kansas, all the impacts. But were any of these the constructed ones, and did they differ from the natural ones? And how does that go on in your?
Yeah, so of course the Baker side, there's that whole northwest section that was given to them because they said, yes, you can build on these wetlands, and that's that whole constructed area. And so that's a great question. How does that constructed wetland differ from the rest of the Baker side, or from the Haskell side that is a lot of fill pits that are so slowly healing and filling, right? And recovering, kind of a passive restoration approach in terms of wetland, no big equipment digging, to reshaping the topography and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's a great question to look at that constructed section And that's just one of many of those comparisons that can be done because of the changes that have undergone. There is a constructed wetland on our side, on the north side. It's east of the rail to trail pathway. And my student Angelica Henson has been doing E. coli and nitrate comparisons between that constructed wetland and on the north, and then Haskell Basin. So there is some of that.
Any significant differences that are obvious?
We're not seeing, yeah, at least no E. coli so
What?
far.
The water can
But yeah, in terms of, kind of you bringing that up, the constructed versus the rest of the wetlands, or the kind of the slowly recovering wetland. I do think about the fact that we used to go where the highway is now. That's where we used to go for our labs. That's something I forgot to tell you guys. I meant to with that big picture. Where the highway is now, that was where we went to, because that was a high quality habitat, a lot of diversity, macroinvertebrates, plants. That's where we tagged butterflies every year prior to the construction. And that was where that really nice accessible boardwalk was. And of course, we just had to walk right across the road. So our access has been incredibly challenged, right? We have to get in a van and go around, to get there. We have to have a vehicle of some sort. We can't just walk right across the road, which is what we were able to do before. And so that's a big change. And the fact that the highway was sited on an area that was the prime area. And that's actually part of the reason we don't have as much data from our side before the construction, because we didn't really do as much there, because that really high quality area around that boardwalk that was created by an Eagle Scout on the Baker side of the Haskell wetlands was beckoning, right? It was such an easy space to go to, and lots of diversity, lots of invertebrates. And so, yeah, I was thinking that through, and I was like, wait a minute, we didn't do as much on, oh, that's why, because it was so easy to cross the road and get to this space where you definitely had more diversity at that time, right? So yeah, that comparison. And before and after, we do have some teacup data on water quality from the north side, so our Haskell wetlands. I don't know if anything was done on the Baker side pre-construction, but on that north side, and that's one thing to dig into old data, essentially, and take a look at that. Yeah.
Can you say something about the West Prairie? Because I've had a couple of opportunities to work with Courtney King on
Yes.
some restoration work. And we visited the West Prairie, and I was blown away by all of the fabulous native plants there.
It's really an amazing space, right? It's a combo of remnant and restored space. Courtney King, Courtney Masterson have really been devoted to working on that space, involving students. I've involved students in simply monitoring that space, like prairie transects in principles of ecology, prior to Courtney King being here. And now with all the restoration work she's doing, it's such a great, and reseeding and that kind of thing, it's such a great opportunity. And she just got approval to do the burn. So I'll just leave this here for now, but you guys heard basically the big picture of, we saw the big vertebrate animals on the west underpass. We didn't see them completing on the east underpass, but we saw the aquatic mammals on the east underpass. Quite a bit of activity, and terrestrial vertebrates on the north side of the east underpass. Yeah, I do want to mention Bill Welton's name for sure here. Bill Welton was very involved in land stewardship and some restoration work, and he was in charge of that U.S. Department of Agriculture grant. I wanted to mention this is an opportunity for collaboration, and including, obviously monitoring all of our different habitats, the prairie, the woodland, the wetland, and creating some infrastructure to have this wetlands complex field station, right? And what kind of terminology do we want to use for a tribal college? Do we want to talk about this ecocultural community-based field station, that collaboratory concept? What else, right? It's a tribal college, potentially, right? We could talk about this as a tribal college field station. This part here talks about kind of the initial work to establish infrastructure for a field station, kind of tribal or Haskell version of a field station. And so We've got this georeferenced grid, signage, permanent water quality monitoring stations, a UTV from grant funding, and other monitoring infrastructure. These folks were really involved in this. Eco ambassadors were really important, so shout out to those guys and the EPA for funding them. The EPA, Kay Embry helped. Dan Wildcat was so important in this, all of his partnerships to build that boardwalk that is damaged. And then Courtney came along and just, what's the word I'm looking for? Poured diesel on this whole thing, if you will, right? She's just working so hard, amplifying the work in her association with the greenhouse, her USDA role, modifying the grid through USDA, putting out benches and kiosks through collaborations, active restoration, partnering with Native Lands Restoration Collaborative, and then doing so much of this community engagement and outreach, and that helps us build this infrastructure to do more, right? And kind of a critical mass to do more there. These are some opportunities, right? We want to get an expanded, updated boardwalk, boathouse blind, install potentially some permanent grid posts we'll see in certain prairie areas, but it depends on, obviously, if we're burning, we're going to establish controlled areas where we're going to come back and burn again. And so I'm excited to see how she moves forward with that burn. See, yeah, we've got grant funding for some of this. We've got some for the design, for the professional design. Courtney King has been working really hard on that and following that as a project manager. Hydrology research is just in the planning stages with USGS. We're looking at putting in some stream gauges and in-ground monitoring wells. And that's potentially going to be partnering also with Ducks Unlimited, we'll see, in a bit of a similar partnership to whoever mentioned Bakerside, to the Ducks Unlimited partnership with Baker. And then we're going to get a new greenhouse. Sorry, I'm going really long. There's just too much to say, but I'm just going to sum her up here, and any other questions you guys have. I think the only other thing you had mentioned, the West Prairie, was the fact that we have this great work being done by graduate students. And this is one of the innovations recently. We've got Dory Summers, yay, first Dory, yay. She's the first one to have a permanent plot on a Haskell-based graduate research project, permanent plot here at the West Prairie. And she is incorporating what she's learning into principles of ecology. So we're having this relationship where we curricularize, what we're doing on the land. And that's really the way to help Haskell, because we are a teaching college, because we are short-staffed. I'm only one of 2 permanent faculty, and I'm the chair. We have a permanent chemistry faculty and myself. We're advertising. Actually, we just sent a request for a biology faculty member. We've got lots of great adjuncts, but we do need to figure out how to dovetail with our teaching college responsibilities, right? Dovetail that with the research opportunities that are going on, right? Rather than making more things that we have to stretch farther, how do we dovetail? And that's what Dory has been working on with her Common Garden Big Blue Stem Ecotype experiment, advised by Sarah Bear. And she's developing materials to teach class. And then we go out to the West Prairie where her plot is. These are all her Big Blue Stem. We measure their heights. The students get to practice that. I was able to use Kay Embry funding to buy enormous not enormous, but ladders this time because our Big Blue Stems were so huge. This, I think, is last year. I think or 2024 rather. And then we did in 2025, they're just much bigger biomass. So the students have to, measure them, clip them, fold them up, put them in the bags, and they have to think about how to help Dory have a good result. And so they need to be careful. It's not just, practice you can throw away from a class that nothing's going to happen. It's actually her research, her master's research. And so that's really a great way to combine that research work and strengthen Haskell and strengthen relationship between Haskell graduates, and then they go into graduate school, and then they come and have that roadmap for pathway for mentoring other students and training in teaching at a tribal college as well. And then Courtney is gone on to graduate school. We were able to give her bridge funding through the Cambry grant, and then also the USDA as a lab and field research assistant. She was invaluable in helping, and this is her helping with Dory and then our students for principles of ecology. Really important help. We miss her because we do not have anybody, any sort of tech or assistant, kind of field assistant person right now. And then she went on to, so she was able to, for 2 years, work on some of her projects, plan on how to be a successful graduate student. Then she got into graduate school with Melinda Adams, and she's planning, and she's also got a funding position through the USDA. And so now she's able to work with students on the land and do restoration work, do reseeding out here in the West Prairie, sampling, cutting back invasive species. Teasel is a nightmare. And, you know, all of these things, and guide other students to do these things. And also they get paid. And then she's got that burn plan started, and we'll hopefully bring students in to contribute on that. And we can use the model that Dory and Sarah and I have kind of come up with. So it'll be really cool. I am going to skip ahead. We've got a network area storage device. We need help with data and archiving. We really need help because we need a place to put our wetlands data. And these are our main takeaways, right? This is a really important historically, spiritually, ecologically space for the multi-tribal Haskell community. It's critical to sustaining quality science curriculum. And the Haskell community and many in the Lawrence community have committed, right? So this is that resilience. We've committed to maintaining this space for future generations, and it's a priceless outdoor classroom. All of this different research and other initiatives happening in the Haskell wetlands since the SLT is really critical to protecting the whole watershed. Because that's often people are saying, you know, hey, what about Haskell? How's Haskell going to be impacted? It's always involved. And we have this kind of sentinel ecosystem that is really helping us think about how will we steward the rest of the watershed? What happened here? Do we want it to happen in other places? And how can we improve the places that are impacted, right? So it's going to be critical to protecting and restoring the area around it, including the Baker side, which, by the way, the Board of Regents was involved in that potential sale of Baker land. People found out about it, and the Haskell Board of Regents said something about it. I don't know if y'all remembered that, but they did. And so that stewardship of a very important spot within that landscape also protects kind of everybody else. And that consideration of the whole floodplain view. And then it's really important, like I mentioned, in the context of community engagement and advocacy with city, county, tribal leaders. This is a really important point. We're often called upon to respond, give letters, be part of different meetings. I mean, so many meetings for the South Lawrence Traffic Way, the expansion, the New Boston Crossing, Wakarusa Vision Plan, and other things, creating interdisciplinary team letters. These take hours and hours to do. And if we have data, especially say about the migrating corridors or the migration corridors, we can talk about what should we do with that SLT expansion. Maybe nobody will listen, but the Federal Highway Administration was very interested, but it didn't go anywhere. So Garrett and Jamie presented, and then lots of partnership opportunities exist and I want to think about how they're going to strengthen Haskell curriculum, increase numbers of learning opportunities for students, and our understanding of these wetlands and our stewardship of the wetlands. And with that, I thank you very much. I have an acknowledgement page that's kind of crazy. There we go. And this is not everybody, but it's there. We got lots of people in there. There are people in here that I'm sorry I may not have put you in there. I apologize. Yeah, it's a big bunch of, it's a collaboratory, that's for sure. Questions? I might show you a couple pictures if you think of a question. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, I also have this interdisciplinary team points from the expansion. But You can get that from me sometime if you want. I have a couple cool pictures. Okay, this is my, and some of you may have seen this already. This is our, see if I can play it. Look back here. This is predation in action, man. This is predation in action. Okay, and then we have a follow-up. This is that same East Underpass, right? It's like Wild America in the underpass. Let's see if it'll play. This is part 2. And we don't have any more footage. That's it. That's what we got.
Is that a bobcat?
Bobcat and a heron. Yeah, and so, or I think it's a heron. Let me show you. There's a, okay, just to let you know, the next day there's a picture of what looks like the same bird walking around, but it could be a mate. Well, or somebody else that's looking for it. But we do have a picture of what looks like the same bird walking in the snow.
No
in the
signs
snow.
of
A limb?
remaining bones or carcass.
No sign of a limb, but that's why I'm like worried that it's probably not the same bird. But it was so cold at this point that nobody went out there to take a look at it. They're right here.
Yeah.
That's what's going on. I mean, look at this built environment, right? Look at this.
Yeah.
If you're looking satellite image, you're thinking, oh, this is just wasteland. Okay, so yeah, so they may be, you know, obviously there's pathways, right? You can see this water path. We got in the car, Garrett Williams and Jamie and we got in the car and we said, we're gonna be otters. And we drove and then got out kind of behind here. We went to the parking lot, we got out, we said, can the otters cross here? Sure enough. And then, oh, can they cross over here and through here? They could. I mean, we were looking at like the physical impediments, but they just don't want to come this way. And we think what's happening is the underpass over on this side is much more like the stream is a sinuous stream. The stream bed is more natural substrate, a lot more vegetation, and it's away from the edge of a road. Whereas this underpass
But on that
is
west
right
side,
next
it's
to the
not
road.
hydrologically connected, so they can't, I don't think they could, an aquatic
They'd
animal
have to
could easily
crawl
get
through.
over
Hmm.
into that western drainage. That's
Yeah,
separate.
they have to crawl across
Yes,
riprap.
It's just not, yeah.
But an otter could. I mean, obviously
Yeah,
they can
fine.
run across the land. We do have pictures of the otters in the woodland area, so they go all the way up to there. Vic got some pictures of otters in the woodland area, so we do have them. There's a small stream that runs through.
So you mentioned that with the USGS, you're finally getting around, or finally getting some good hydrology on that.
Well, we're good. We're in the planning stage.
Because that is one of the big questions, and one of the issues with the northeast water area, that should be drying out partly, and it's not. The water level is going to remain constant for reasons that are not entirely clear. I remember talking with Dawn about the mystery of,
And we have beavers.
yeah,
We definitely have beaver activity. And in the eastern underpass, there is a beaver dam. I didn't mention that because there's just so much you can mention, but up here, there's a beaver dam. And so that's causing a little bit more of impounding of water, I guess, above it. But this area is generally deeper. This right, it's east. It's where the water's flowing. So we think that's what's going on with, you know, aquatic animal use, is that it's a deeper area, whereas that west underpass is a shallow stream going through there. Yeah. How about other questions?
You said that the aquatic animals were traversing the west underpass more. You could document them going.
Actually, I haven't.
No.
We haven't
Okay.
gotten the aquatic animals doing it. We haven't actually seen them complete.
But
Whereas
there's
we
been
got
instances
deer,
of that,
coyotes,
sorry.
raccoons.
So you have the terrestrial animals, they're the ones
Yes,
that are crossing,
yes.
but we don't have any evidence of aquatic animals using that.
We don't have evidence of the mammals.
Yeah.
We've got a juvenile night heron that was using that space. They actually waited and then flew through underneath the underpass, and used that area to hunt snakes. It's hard to catch snakes on a trail cam, but we have got a couple turtles. Anything else you recall?
Somebody mentioned salamanders real recently emerging
From,
from near the fire station.
oh, near the fire station. Okay, yeah.
That's kind of an annual thing.
Yeah. I haven't been looking at salamanders. It's not necessarily doesn't mean that somebody can't. I mean, and they can, one of those vehicles for research is this class called undergraduate research. Another, of course, is internships. I didn't really mention that too much, but definitely working with me to figure out how to mentor a student, say, that's enrolled in undergrad research or who wants to do an internship. And we can actually fund them through the Kansas Idea Network of Biomedical Research Excellence. And again, that's another point I wanted to make. And then you would be able to say, okay, you want to do research on muskrats. I'm a mammologist. Dr. Chapin has funding. We can work together on this project at the Haskell wetlands. Or you want to do work on, soil hydrology. I'm a hydrologist. We can work together on that.